Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Geographically? Geographically. This is cool. So I would say make sure that pretty face is showing.
Yes, true.
They're going to want to see that thing. They're going to want to see that thing, Alan. That face. You good?
Ready?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode where Alan and I did a 5-minute clinic on the word forgiveness. Today, we are going to do a small talks episode on the word persistence.
Someone suggested this. Who was
Someone
that?
suggested this. So I actually just got a new client. Shout out to Devazio for being an absolute savage and driving across the country in a semi-truck and hammering episodes of the Hyperconscious Podcast. Super proud of you, my man.
Oh, yeah.
All the love.
So the first thing I want to do, as you know, we normally define the word first. But first, I want to give you a friendly reminder to go to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com. Click on join #HyperconsciousNation. See, I made it funny.
My goodness.
When I can make Kevin laugh, that means that I'm actually funny because he has a high standard for funny. And
Not when I'm tired.
And purposely doesn't laugh at people's jokes that aren't funny.
Well, you know what? I don't want to inflate anybody's ego.
Right.
You know
Because
what I
you
mean?
have high standards for funny.
Well, sometimes I say a funny, and I think it's funny. Nobody laughs, then I realize, well, okay. Probably shouldn't bring that one to the masses.
Crickets.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, but seriously, the mailing list, the mailing list though, you click join #HyperconsciousNation. You're going to get 3 Hyperconscious morning minutes to your inbox Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to keep you on track towards your goals and dreams. Folks, it's what we do on the daily basis that makes our dreams come true, and we want to help you make yours come true. Okay.
Beautiful.
Persistence. Thank you, sir. So
You're welcome.
There's 4 definitions that we went through before recording.
Can we just skip the first 2?
Right, we're going to skip the first 2 because when they use the word persistence in the definition, not so good.
Not so good.
So the third definition is continued existence or occurrence. And the fourth one is the one we really liked, which is the continuance of an effort after its cause is removed.
I like after its cause is removed. So, as we said in the 5-minute clinic on forgiveness, I think early on, Alan and I thought persistence and resilience are the same thing. And I don't think that anymore, and I don't know if that's because I'm more clear on the definitions or we've talked a lot about resilience and persistence in different episodes, but I think that the biggest difference is persistence isn't necessarily a struggle. It's showing up repeatedly.
Right.
Like, that's the thing. Okay, resilience is when you get punched in the face and you fall down and you have to get up. Persistence is when it feels like all the work you're doing is accomplishing nothing. You still show up. You still put in the reps.
This is happening for a reason because it's interesting. The next episode we're doing on Scratching the Surface is going to be proactive versus reactive.
Yeah.
If you think about it, resilience is kind of enduring something that's being done to you.
So reactive.
And persistence is proactively doing something that is super challenging regardless of the fact that it's challenging.
Yeah.
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 And there's a long, awkward pause.
I just wanted to see how many times we go back and forth with yeah.
All right, so persistence. What is something, Kevin, that you have needed to persist at that you're glad you did?
Oh, wow. Great question. Okay, so let's go behind the scenes. We'll go behind the scenes a little bit. This podcast, this is awesome. So you and I really feel like we have momentum going.
Oh, yeah.
We have a lot of listeners reaching out. we have new clients. Everything's going really well.
Big Mo.
Everything's going really well. We have Big Mo. I had a podcaster or a group of podcasters reach out to me and say, hey, we really like your podcast. We're new. Is there any, tips you have? And I always try to help people, give them some tips. And
right.
and I said, like, when it comes to the networking and getting guests, do this, do this, do this. And I think for me, when I first started this, very similar to Jeff Fenster, the CEO of Everbull, that was 2 episodes ago if you guys haven't heard it. I just kind of learned stuff as I went.
Mm-hmm.
I had this moment today where I was telling these podcasters that, now I'm an audio editor, I'm a video editor. I have been very persistent when it comes to not only maintaining what has to get done for the podcast, but taking on other challenges.
Right.
And I remember, for those who have been listening for a minute, when we first started doing teaser clips, it took me 16 hours to do a 1-minute teaser clip because my computer crashed 4 times. I ended up buying a new computer because of this. But that was resilience and persistence.
Yeah.
Persistence is seeing, this is a great analogy.
And you need both.
You definitely need both.
Yep.
So say this. Say somebody said to you, there is a diamond the size of a bowling ball through that wall. And all you have is a hammer, a chisel, and a bottle of water. Persistence is going at that wall all day and then going to sleep and waking up and going at it again. Waking up and going at it again. Even when it seems like nothing is working. Even though it seems like nothing is happening, it doesn't seem like you're getting any closer to that diamond because you can't see it. That's what persistence is. Persistence is just getting up every single day and doing your absolute best because eventually it'll pay off.
So the quote that always comes to mind with persistence for me is one that I honestly live by. You've probably heard me say it before, but it's by Thoreau. He says, if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life that he himself has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. You have to have faith that it's going to pay off. And faith is being able to have believe in something that you cannot see yet. How many of the things, Kev, that have paid off for us, we weren't able to see tangibly in the moment that they were going to pay off, but we knew eventually, we trusted, we believed that they would.
All of them.
Right. You have to have belief that your persistence will pay off. Now, I think the reason why a lot of people get caught up when it comes to persistence is how do you know when to persist at something, and how do you know when, okay, this approach isn't working, I have to adapt?
Well, I think just because you're switching up your,
right,
what's the word I'm looking for?
Your game plan, your strategy.
Just
right.
because you're switching your strategy up doesn't mean you're not being persistent.
So how do you know when you have the right strategy and just need to keep crushing it? And how do you know when it's time to switch your strategy?
Well, okay, so I think one of the things is you have to make sure that your goal is still the same as when you started.
Right.
So for us, if our goal was only to have a successful podcast, quote unquote successful podcast, we would do nothing different. We wouldn't have to.
Right.
Because this is successful. Like we...
Oh, yeah.
But I'll go deeper.
Okay, please.
But I think that a lot of people start, like this started as a podcast. I told you, I just wanted to be a podcaster.
Right.
Right? And then it evolved into, I think I want to be a high-level coach, a high-level mindset coach. When an athlete has a mental block, they call me.
Right.
I think I'd like to do speeches after going and seeing Brendan Burchard. Like, I think I could be on stage, and then... and everything in between.
Right.
And Matt, my buddy that I live with, is a real estate investor. I'd like to get into real estate eventually.
Oh, yeah.
So if you feel like what you're doing isn't working, right? What changes can you actually make? Like, what are some specific changes that you can make to better leverage your time, to better leverage your abilities, to... pay somebody to do the stuff that you don't want to do or you can no longer do. It's really hard to say what's not working and what is working. Right. Because how do you really know? I think you have to use perspective to realize, wow, 6 months ago, I was doing this and now I'm doing this. Like, this really is working because now I have more connections. Now I'm more confident in front of the microphone or whatever it is for you. So I think, number one, find perspective.
Okay.
Because if you don't have anything to compare it to, you're not going to know where you actually are.
So measure it?
You have to.
How do you get perspective? So we went back to episode 23 recently.
Yeah.
And we listened to it together, and it's unbelievable perspective.
Is not good.
Yeah, if you go back to episode 23, we apologize in advance. Although Joshua Munoz did drop some excellent knowledge.
Yes. Shout out to him for his event this weekend. We saw him.
Right. That was awesome on Saturday. But, okay, so that gives you perspective.
Feedback.
Right. Okay, so how do you consistently get feedback to know? Because there's that quote, right? If you keep doing what you're doing, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten. But how do you know when it's time to stop doing what you're doing? Because I think some people quit too early, right before they break through that diamond.
Yeah.
Right before they break through that wall you referenced earlier.
Yeah.
So for me, I will bang my head against the wall long enough until I realize this is just not working, and then I'll adapt. So one quote I also want to say that my coach at one point, I'm trying to get him on the podcast actually, he used to coach me, and he said this. He said, Alan, there's two ways to succeed. You either listen to the master who has repeatedly created the results that you want, or you beat your head against the wall until you listen.
Yeah.
I usually choose option 2, unfortunately. But that's why persistence is so important, because if it stings, it sticks. When you were willing to sit in that discomfort for 16 hours to make that clip, you bought a new laptop. Why? Because the pain was so great on that other crappy laptop that crashed 4 times that it forced you to change. Human beings only change when they're in pain, and so you forced yourself into pain through your persistence. And that's something I want the listeners to take away. Like, if you quit too early, you're not going to have enough pain to actually make a real adaptation.
I think that perspective is unbelievably important, because that's how we always figure out we're either doing better, worse, or similarly to how we think we're doing.
Right.
We always say, like, your perception is probably off. You're either doing better or worse than you actually think you are.
100%.
And that depends on what feedback you're seeking.
Right.
If you don't look at your bank account, you're going to think you're doing better or worse than you are, unless you're religious about viewing your bank account.
100%.
Right? And that's how...
And we're most affected by what we think is.
Right.
Like what we...
Right.
Jim Rohn says this. He says, it's what we think that matters most. Like if you... Let's say you are actually killing it in your bank account, but you never check.
Oh, yeah. You're not going to be happy.
But you think that you're not doing well.
Yeah.
That's what you're basing your decisions off of.
Right. What you think you are is... That's one of my favorite quotes. And I didn't get that from Jim. One day I thought to myself, what you think you are is more important than what you actually are.
Right.
Because you're basing everything off what you think.
Right.
Not what you are.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Based on your
everything is up
perception.
here.
Yeah.
We're going deep here.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things is... I think I was listening to a Blinkist today. I don't remember which one it was. But one of the things is... I think a lot of people, like say for instance, a lot of people would say, well, you guys might be 165. I don't even know what episode this is going to be because we're doing 4 and it's a whole thing and it's a week before. But
I think it is 165.
Okay, so you guys have done 165 podcasts.
Right.
Do you feel like a successful podcaster? Well, the thing is, it's not just about the podcast anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So let me use my favorite example ever, probably. If you want to start a nonprofit for dogs. Like I always like talking about that because I know there's people out there that like that.
Absolutely.
So you might literally feel bad about yourself because you're basing the fact off that you don't have a brick and mortar building that helps adopt dogs. But what if you just started volunteering at one to figure out what it was like behind the scenes?
Right.
What if you were taking classes on business management, so you could figure out, okay, net income in, what can I expect to pay? Like, what is real estate in the San Francisco area for a dog shelter? Something that will work for a dog shelter that has an acre of land that I can fence in. How much is fencing? That's the thing. The thing is, the more you know, the better your perception will be. The more aware you are, the closer your perception can be. So you might not feel like you're making progress, but you actually might be making progress on the foundation of what's to come.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think that persistence will create the feedback necessary to stay on track as well. Because if you think about persistence, it's basically the definition, my definition is taking action consistently in a specific direction, almost regardless of outcome.
Yeah.
Now, if your decision-making paradigm is predicated on what you think, then every time you fail forward, every time you try something, you're going to get feedback on whether or not it's working, and then you're going to decide whether or not what you're doing you should persist or not. Am I making sense?
Yeah,
there?
no, it makes sense to me.
Right. So one of the quotes I keep saying is, the key to success is massive failure. And what I mean by that is, okay, Catherine Nash, she came on the podcast twice.
Catherine Mini but Mighty Nash.
She talked about how long it took her to figure fitness out,
Mm-hmm.
and how she tried all the different diets, how she had all these different, difficulties regarding what was the health challenges that she had with her spine?
Oh, scoliosis.
Right. And she tried everything, right? Quote unquote. We tell ourselves a story. Oh, I've tried everything. Well, no, she tried so many different things, and through trial and error, every single time she failed forward, so to speak, and a diet didn't work or a training program didn't work, she honed in a little more and a little more on what did work. So every time you persist, you get more clarity on what does work and what doesn't work. Every single time.
Yeah.
And then you bring that into the next rep.
It's like, okay. So if somebody said to you, you, me, and 10 other people are going to be on an island for 30 days.
Right.
And that was it. There was nothing else.
Okay.
There's no guarantee of money. There's no guarantee of anything.
Okay.
The person who persisted and stayed there for the longer than anybody else would have learned more than anybody else. They would have adapted more than anybody else. And I think that's the problem is if you quit after 15 days, you don't know what you would have learned in the last 15 days.
I know.
Those last 15 days could have allowed you to stay for another 60. And that's the problem. This is why people regret their decisions. Because they will make a decision based on what is right now.
Right.
And they'll miss out on all the things they would have learned. We would have missed out between episode 100 and 165. How much have we learned?
Oh my God, man. It's exponential.
If we
it's
quit at 100, we would have thought in our minds that we couldn't have a successful podcast maybe.
Right.
Or if we stopped at 50 or 23.
Right.
We would have thought, the thing is, the longer you persist, the more tools you get.
Right.
As long as you're willing to find the feedback. You have to be willing to take the feedback.
Along the way.
Yeah, you have to.
That's why I say the key to success is massive failure.
Well, that's not the sexiest thing I've ever heard, but I do agree with it.
It's true. Like,
I know.
How many times have we screwed up and then got a new, this new camera?
Yes.
We just set up a brand new camera that is far beyond anything Kevin or I have ever figured out, which, by the way, talk about a powerless position. Yes. Our awareness on this camera is zero. Right. So we had to call one of my buddies, Ryan Bliss. He was
Shout
actually
out
on the
to
podcast.
Ryan Bliss.
Thank you, Ryan, for helping us. But he's a director, feature film coming out soon. Anyways, I don't know what episode it was either.
That's your job, man.
Yeah, we're going to have him back on the show at some point after his film comes out. But anyways, so he knows more about cameras than both of us combined. So one thing I want the takeaway to be is when you have zero awareness in a given arena, in this case cameras, you're powerless. Kevin and I had no idea what to do. We were basically trial and error, trying to figure it out, and it was a whole thing. It took us basically 3 or 4 hours to just get to the point where we were before this new camera.
Yeah.
Now, here's the problem, and this is where persistence comes in. We got this new opportunity to use a brand new camera that is far better than the one we were using before. What comes with that opportunity is challenge. Now we have to figure out how to use this thing that is so far beyond our current capabilities. We persisted for 3 hours, maybe even more. What time did you get here?
I got here at 1:45. So
okay.
I've been here for almost 7 hours.
Okay, so we persisted and figured out how to make this work. And we also were resourceful by calling people who had answers and tools and distinctions that we didn't have. And just so you know, Ryan works with a director of photography, a DP, who knows way more about cameras than him. So the very first thing he said is, just so you know, this is not my area of expertise. And I said, well, trust me, you know 10 times more than we do. So you always want to go to the experts. But the key here is, I told this to a client earlier today on the phone. The problem with success is that when you succeed, you actually get more problems, more challenges, more discomfort. So what's an example of that? This camera, for example. If we weren't able to persist and sit in the discomfort of not knowing anything about how we were going to podcast today, we quite literally would have had to go back to the old camera and we would have never leveled up. That is the value of persistence. You will level up to the extent that you persist toward a given endeavor. No one has it all figured out. You have to be able to be resourceful and go to the experts, and you have to be able to hang in long enough to really figure it out.
Well, I think that's it, man. I think going back to the digging a hole analogy, like you might get so tired that you say, my arms don't work anymore. Like I'm not able to dig anymore. Okay, so research a sharper tool.
Right.
Like that's what persistence is. It's not always smacking your head against the wall.
Right.
Sometimes it's realizing that you don't have to, and you can, search for knowledge elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And persistence is one of the most important things,
ever.
Along with resilience. Resilience means you get knocked down, you get back up.
Right.
Persistence means you keep standing and doing the small, sometimes insignificant tasks that don't seem like they're adding up to anything. I think we should get out of here because this is supposed to be a small talks episode. We're already 20 minutes in. We're all fired up. We still got to do scratching the surface. Everything's going on.
Oh my! Well, we're persisting.
We are persisting.
We're staying in the persistence.
I'm enjoying this. I'm thoroughly enjoying this. this topic, but I challenge you, if you're watching this on our nice new camera or you're listening to us, we actually are getting new headphones and other things too. It's a whole thing. Today's been a hell of a day.
Yeah.
But very, very grateful, very happy. But if you're listening or if you're watching us, I challenge you to figure out, what is something I could have persisted more on? Is there something that I quit that I feel like I could have made progress on if I just kept with it? If you are doing something, this is perfect for the quote I put up on my Instagram and Facebook. Do not fall in love with the potential of something unless you are willing to date the work that it takes to get it. And that's something that, if you see a shiny object, you want that shiny object. Well, you have to understand that you're going to have to date the effort in order to get that shiny object. Anything else, quickly?
I challenge you, if you're out there right now, to, like Kevin said, not only look back at what you shouldn't have quit, but more importantly, set a goal right now, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, whatever it is, something that you're going to persist at. Persistence is a habit. A habit. A habit. Persistence is a habit, and it's honestly one of my greatest strengths is my ability to persist. I can tell you wholeheartedly, like my Instagram account, I've been doing social media for 4 years, and I'm still not good at it. But I will never stop because it is working. It's not working well, but it's definitely making a positive impact, and I've learned so much along the way, and I don't know when I'm actually going to be quote-unquote good at it, but I will not stop until I am, and I think persistence is huge. So set a goal for a certain amount of time to create the habit of persistence, because once it becomes your identity, I don't care what happens, I will never stop climbing. That's going to leak into every area of your life.
I know I said this on the last episode, but a lot of people have reached out to Alan and myself and asked about book suggestions. I just created a new page on the hyperconsciouspodcast.com that has our book suggestions. If you go there, it has a link to it. If you click on it, it'll bring you to Amazon, and not only will you get a new book, but we will get a percentage of it because we are Amazon affiliates.
It will not cost you any more than it would have otherwise.
No, and it will help keep us doing this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And we can, we'll put all that stuff into speeches and masterminds and online training programs and podcast gear and changing the world.
It will help us persist, as they say.
Wow, well done.
See what I did
there?
there?
No, that was smooth.
Thank you.
Pretty smooth. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Up next, we are going to do a Scratching the Surface episode on proactive versus reactive. That is very similar to an episode we did really... Oh, my goodness. Damn, Craig.
Man.
It's very similar to an episode that we did recently on intentions, right? So when you are living unintentionally, you are living reactively. You are not doing things proactively to try to set yourself up for success. You're trying to kind of avoid failure. There's a big difference there.
There's a huge difference there. I think most of our day should be focused on proactive behavior and focusing on the essentials. Don't miss that episode, folks, even though Kevin cannot speak.
I cannot speak, and hopefully I get better at speaking because that episode is getting ready to be recorded next.
Okay, and we will talk to you soon.
Talk to you on Friday.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to another episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast.
Going hyperconscious will absolutely change your life, because if you understand why something is the way it is, now you have the power to change it. If you going hyperconscious with us has changed your life in any way, please share this episode with one of your friends, because the more people that go hyperconscious, the better this world's going to be for everybody.
And if you would kindly leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would help us make more people hyperconscious, and we would be greatly appreciative.
Thank you.
Bye.